A fantastic year for games is behind us, and now it is time to look forward to the year ahead in 2025. A lot of exciting games that I personally am looking forward to, so I cannot wait to talk about that today. But hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to talk through 10 games that I am most looking forward to here in 2025, and most of which don't really have locked in release dates. I think we're really kind of at that time in January where these developers are hard at work but not committing to a particular day or month, which is totally fine. I still think a lot of these have an opportunity to release in this year. And then there's other ones where I'm probably more cautiously optimistic that they'll release in 2025. You'll just never know when a game is going to be delayed. But it is my hope coming away from this video that you have plenty more games added to your watch list, your wish list, whatever it might be, as you're beginning to kind of build out the games that you plan to buy in 2025, maybe pre-order, or at least, again, add to your wish list and to keep your eye on going into the year. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Coming in at number 10 is a sequel to a game I played last year and ranked pretty highly on my top games played in 2024. Pokemon Legends Arceus was the game I played. Pokemon Legends ZA, I'm not even sure how you actually correctly pronounce that, but the sequel that's planned for release in 2025, and I have to imagine a near launch or maybe even launch title for Switch 2. And what I find particularly interesting about this game is that it's going to be entirely set in Lumiose City, which is where Pokemon X and Y, the 3DS Pokemon games, were set. And I just don't know how the gameplay of Legends is going to translate to city life. I have to imagine there's going to be opportunities to go and get outside of the city, because I think Arceus, where it was at its best, is when you're out in those vast landscapes able to discover new Pokemon and kind of get lost in those open zoned environments, do your research, whatever tasks that you're trying to complete, and then go back to that central hub world. So I wonder if Lumiose City will kind of act as that central hub like Jubilife City did in Legends Arceus. It's really tough to know. I'm just excited for more of this Legends series because I feel like this was a great foundation, and if this is the starting point for what I presume to be a long-running spin-off series for Game Freak going forward, I think there's a lot of promise there. Like I said in my Games of the Year video, the bones to Legends Arceus I think was really strong. I just think it really could have used quite a bit more polish, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they end up doing with this sequel and ZA, which I feel like that has to be a working title. There's no way they print a game with that title. This isn't Kingdom Hearts. Pokemon, they tend to be a little bit better with their naming conventions. But regardless, when it comes out in 2025, I have to imagine it's a game I'll pick up near launch, assuming it's not exclusive to the Switch 2. Now, next up at number 9 is a game that, truthfully, I never heard of. I did a lot of research into games that were coming out in 2025, both on the indie and the AAA side. But this is a little indie 2D platformer called The Eternal Life of Goldman. The graphical style really caught my eye when I was watching trailers, and the reason being is because everything seems and appears to be hand-drawn. So you have these beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds as you're kind of making your way around these levels, and I saw on Reddit that the developer had posted that it's not a traditional gated exploration Metroidvania. I think there's certainly some elements to the game, but I do wonder if there's some A to B levels here as well, or if there's just some Metroidvania gated exploration elements and you don't have just this massive environment or world to explore in a gated exploration fashion. But what also interests me is that the story seems to be inspired by old fairy tales, and again, it's all depicted in this classic frame-by-frame animation with these pre-rendered backgrounds. So anytime I see a game nowadays, indie, AAA, or otherwise, that has pre-rendered backgrounds, it's all hand-drawn, that's a game that has my eye. It's one I definitely want to give a try whenever it releases, because we just don't see many games like that nowadays, and maybe I'm on a little bit of an island thinking this way. A lot of these 2D, side-scrolling indie platformers kind of run together. They blend together for me. I know a lot of them are great and people love them for very good reasons, but when I see an art style like this, hand-drawn, pre-rendered backgrounds, sign me the heck up. It is still a TBD 2025 release, so I'm holding out hope that the developer can get this one out sometime this year, but it is coming to all platforms, so definitely something to keep your eye on. Next up is another indie game that when I saw the initial trailer, it really caught my eye as well, and that is Mouse PI for Hire. This is a game that seems to blend traditional, fast-paced, chaotic first-person shooting with your old-school 1930s Saturday morning cartoons. And you seem to be playing as this private investigator, this really deep voice, 1930s jazz music playing in the background. It looks chaotic, it looks fun, and I would not get the cutesy graphical style twisted or be fooled. I really believe that this is probably going to have the Cuphead effect where, yes, you have the 1930s cartoon aesthetic, but I have to imagine there's going to be some brutal boss battles and maybe even level to level as you're kind of making your way, guns a-blazing from room to room. Maybe it is super tough. It's really difficult to say how difficult a game it's going to be, but I love me a good first-person shooter every now and again. You put that in a Steamboat Willie old-school cartoon world, sign me up for that too. This looks great. I think this is also one that has a TBD 2025 release, so it's also, I believe, coming to all platforms. So keep an eye out for this one, wishlisted on Steam. If you like first-person shooters and you like old-school cartoons, this is not one you're going to want to miss. Next up is a game I think many people have been anticipating for quite some time. It's seen a number of delays for a variety of different reasons, but that is Replaced. This game could probably be best explained as Inside Limbo meets Blade Runner. It is a 2.5D sci-fi futuristic platformer that looks absolutely incredible. When I first saw the trailer, I was so intrigued. And like I said about The Eternal Life of Goldman, I'm not typically super drawn into these indie 2D platformers, but this one has a really striking pixel art graphical style. And based on a detailed gameplay session that the developer did with IGN, they really seem to be focused on creating a gripping and engaging single player experience. I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but from a current generation standpoint, this is probably the most impressive, breathtaking 2D style game I've ever seen. Just the level of intricate detail in creating each frame of the game, it really brings a cyberpunk world to life. And this is coming from someone who is actually playing Cyberpunk 2077 right now, years after release, because I wanted to make sure it was polished. It looks like that 3D environment translated to a 2D game. So if you're into Cyberpunk, you love Blade Runner, but you also love those Inside Limbo 2.5D puzzle platformers, check out Replaced, watch a trailer, add it to your Steam wishlist. I believe this is only coming to PC and Xbox. Definitely one to keep on your radar. It is certainly one of my most anticipated games coming into 2025. Now, talking about beautiful games, coming in at number 6 is Crimson Desert. This is a massive open world action RPG. The developers seem to be drawing inspiration from games like Dragon's Dogma, The Witcher, and even a little bit of the more recent open world Assassin's Creed games. I never heard of this developer before, Pearl Abyss. They previously made an MMO, I think in 2014, and then they maybe ported or created another similar MMO for mobile games. So they have at least some history and experience creating rich, detailed, breathtaking open worlds, and that seems to translate very well to Crimson Desert. The gameplay and combat specifically looks brutal, intense, with kind of a God of War weight or heaviness to it. And I can't emphasize enough, just a breathtaking open world to explore. You can travel by horse. I think you can even ride a dragon through the skies. For someone like myself that loves open world action RPGs, whether it's Skyrim, Oblivion, The Witcher, Kings of Amalur Reckoning, just put me in a fantasy open world action RPG where I can go anywhere and do whatever I please. That's my kind of game, and this seems to really be scratching that itch, especially in the absence of something like The Witcher 4, which is years away, and even that Witcher remake that I think CD Projekt Red is hard at work on. So Crimson Desert, if you love fantasy, open world, third-person action RPGs, this is one to add to your list. They, I think, recently confirmed that they're targeting a late 2025 release, so one I cannot wait to get my hands on. Coming in at number 5 is Giant Squid's next game, and that is Sword of the Sea. Now, Journey has become one of my favorite games of all time. That game company, of course, created that game, and then a few developers went and created a different development studio called Giant Squid. And they have since made Abzu, one of my favorite games from a few years ago called The Pathless, and now they have this new game coming out called Sword of the Sea. And it seems to be essentially Journey meets Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. You are skateboarding and snowboarding through these really beautiful, striking environments in the sand, not unlike Journey. and you seem to be going on a quest to unveil a lost ocean. So all you needed to say is Giant Squid, Journey meets Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and I'm there. And I'm sure from a gameplay perspective, it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be fast, high-speed movement like the Pathless, but I'm sure by the end, I'll be in tears. I'll need to go on a long walk contemplating my life and where I go from here, because that's kind of what Giant Squid and certainly that game company tend to do with their games. But if Austin Wintory, who composed the soundtrack to both Journey and The Pathless, reprises his role as the composer, I'm sure it's a soundtrack that will be unforgettable and will perfectly complement the gameplay in Sword in the Sea. But this is another one that I don't think has a release date quite yet. I'm really hoping it comes out in 2025, because I have no doubt this will end up being one of my favorite games of the year. If you like Journey, you like Tony Hawk, you like SSX Tricky, look no further. Sword in the Sea is definitely the game for you, and one to keep your eye on going into 2025. Coming in at number 4 is actually 2 games. I couldn't separate these because they basically take place in the same type of setting. The first of which is Ghost of Yotai, Sucker Punch's next Ghost of game, and the second is Assassin's Creed Shadows. Both are set in feudal Japan. Both of them I think will play somewhat similarly to one another, but Ghost of Yotai in particular I'm interested in because it takes place 330 years after the events of the first game, and from what I was reading, the story seems to center around the theme of underdog vengeance. So heck yeah, sign me the heck up. Ghost of Tsushima was my favorite game, or is my favorite game on the PlayStation 4. Breathtaking open world. Graphically speaking, at that point, it was probably the best looking game I had ever seen in my life. An incredible open world to explore. Fascinating combat system that I absolutely adored. So you give me more of that set 330 years after the events of the first game. Yes. Game of the Year candidate already. Absolutely, no doubt about it. And then Assassin's Creed Shadows, I've always wanted them to take Assassin's Creed to feudal Japan. They're finally doing it in this beautiful open world. The game was delayed into next year for a variety of reasons I don't really know. I think it's coming here in the spring, so very much looking forward to that. I think gameplay, world building, Ubisoft doesn't tend to miss. The past couple of Assassin's Creed games have been a bit of a snooze fest on the story side of things, and so I hope they don't miss when it comes to feudal Japan. Loved the story in Assassin's Creed Origins and seeing how that creed originally came to be with Aya and Bayek, kind of messed that up. Those two characters. Odyssey was pretty good too in Greece, and Valhalla and Mirage were just, I was sleeping by the midway point. It was just not very compelling. So I hope they craft a much better story here with Assassin's Creed Shadows, but even if they don't, I know I can count on Sucker Punch to create and craft a really great story in The Ghost of Yotai. So a lot of time in feudal Japan in 2025, I have no doubt, but very much looking forward to both of these games. Coming in at number 3 is a game I was hoping would sneak into 2024. I really believed it was going to be my paternity leave game, and that is Obsidian's next game, that is Avowed. When I originally saw this trailer, that person firing that arrow, flying across the sky, killing that skeleton, and then that first-person fantasy action RPG combat, I was like, yes, thank you, Obsidian. You are bringing the next Elder Scrolls game to our fingertips, because we know Bethesda isn't going to do it for probably another 10 years. So when we saw more gameplay over the past several years, I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want. It's not going to be Skyrim. It's not going to be Oblivion. It's Obsidian. It's going to be in the same way that Outer Worlds was a much more contained and digestible world and story and game in space versus Starfield, which was much more bigger. Avowed will be that perfect appetizer that we need to kind of hold us over until Bethesda either remasters something like Oblivion or brings us that next Elder Scrolls game. From the gameplay I've seen, it looks to really scratch the itch I'm looking for. I know it's not going to be Skyrim or Oblivion, but if you can give me a somewhat compelling story, an open world that's fun to explore, and engaging first-person combat with a decent progression system, that's totally fine. I'll be there day one on Game Pass, playing Avowed. Really excited for this game. I'm happy they delayed it if it means the game's going to be a bit more polished. And listening to the initial previews and impressions, it sounded like the game did need a bit more time in the oven. That's perfectly okay with me. Avowed, Obsidian's next fantasy action RPG. Cannot wait for that next year. Coming in at number 2, I'm probably a little overly optimistic about this game releasing this year. Had to sport the Perfect Dark shirt. I thought this game was in development hell. I thought we were probably never going to see this game. But then they dropped the trailer not too long ago, and I was like, oh my gosh. The shooting mechanics look solid. It's beautiful graphically. Mirror's Edge parkour? Shut it all down. Joanna is back. Perfect Dark is here to stay. And if it does release here in 2025, it'll be the 25th anniversary since the original game's release on the Nintendo 64, which is one of my favorite games on the console, one of my favorite first-person shooters ever. In a game on the Xbox 360, Xbox Series X, I still play with friends online because that multiplayer is so classic and so fun, and I just hope that we, one, get a compelling single-player story that's enjoyable and much better than Perfect Dark Zero, and we also have a very enjoyable, addicting online multiplayer that we can play with friends later this year. So fingers crossed that Perfect Dark does come out this year. That trailer gave me a tremendous amount of hope that this game is actually going to hit and not be a miss like Perfect Dark Zero. So let's see. Let's be cautiously optimistic. It comes out this year. If they need a bit more time, that's fine. But again, that trailer looked pretty dang good. Last but certainly not least, coming in at number 1, we have Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I literally had to look off to my right because that is certainly a choice for a video game title. But this looks like the RPG that I never thought we'd see in 2025. Turn-based combat with some really unique action-oriented mechanics. Think Final Fantasy XIII and its paradigm system with some Lost Odyssey energy to it, but don't get it twisted. This game is not bright, cheery, and colorful. It looks dark, very mature tones, not unlike something like Final Fantasy XVI. I'm talking dark, gory, twisted. And speaking of Final Fantasy XVI, Ben Starr is back behind the mic, voicing one of the main protagonists in this game, like he did for Clive in 16. And Andy Serkis is lending his voice to this game, of Gollum fame. So major excitement surrounding this game. I just don't think we get many RPGs like this nowadays, especially on the turn-based front. And the trailer just had these real sweeping orchestral music playing, like I think Nier Replicant meets your Dark Souls boss battle theme. I mean, it was, I don't use this word lightly, it was epic. So you combine a beautiful orchestral score, Andy Serkis, Ben Starr voice acting, turn-based combat with some unique real-time elements, beautiful gothic-looking world. Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I'm looking at you, my most anticipated game coming into 2025. If it does release this year, I don't know how this game misses. You have all the pieces to be a successful, very memorable RPG. Maybe one of the best that we've seen in recent years, so very much looking forward to this game. All right, everyone, those are the 10 most anticipated games for me coming into 2025. There's a lot more that I didn't capture here, so let me know down in the comment section below, what are some of your most anticipated games coming out in 2025? And let me know too, did I open up your eyes to any games that you might not have had on your radar, but now you do? Would love to hear from you down in the comment sections below. I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.